Yo, what's up? This is Joe from, I was just wondering if you got my letter.
Hello, Puppet. My name is Jaren Barnes.
Are we in the same conversation? Because I feel like we're not.
We are, so I got the letter from you on the postcard, pink postcard that said you want to buy my house.
You want to go get some tea and some crumps?
Tea and some crumpets? Crumpets? What?
This is the Simple Wholesaling Podcast, episode 90?
We are so dumb. Now introducing your host, Brett Snodgrass.
Yo, what's going on, everybody out there? Thank you for joining us again on another episode of the Simple Wholesaling Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Snodgrass, and I'm with my co-host, Jaren Barnes. What's up, man?
What's up, man? You guys should definitely check out our videos because
Crazy.
that was the best intro ever.
I was like random. We don't know what we're doing. Making something up in 1 second on the spot.
Has it changed from any of the other 90 episodes we've done?
Nope. That's just us.
Yeah.
Us.
Bust out the Kermit though.
This is Kermit the Frog here, and we're here with Joe. Hey, Joe, glad to have you on the show here. And...
Man, you're the best impersonator ever.
Hey, Kermit.
Who is that?
I don't know. That's Mr.
Yoda? Sounded like Yoda.
Yeah. Anyways, guys, thank you for joining us again. We have a great show for you today. My good friend Joe McCall is on the show today, and Joe is from St. Louis, Missouri, and he is going to talk to us all about wholesaling and lease options. He's a lease options master, and this is a great show. He is a family man, a godly man, and flips over 100 deals a year. And just doing some awesome stuff. And he's an awesome coach.
Flips over 100 deals a year from his RV, traveling the world, doing all this crazy stuff with his family.
Yeah.
He definitely is like 4-hour work week stat. I mean, he probably might work like 10 hours or something, but he works typically really remote. I saw him speak at our local Syria, and he's a really inspiring guy. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned for that. Joe McCall is with us today. But with that, if you guys love what we're doing here on the Simple Wholesaling Podcast, please go to iTunes right now. Leave us a 5-star review. We would appreciate that.
Just leave an honest review. If you think we suck, just tell us. It helps.
There you go. We don't have one that we're going to read today, but just a quick something that's going on with us. And if you guys haven't heard some of the previous episodes, we are looking at rebranding our podcast.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we're going to go through 100 episodes of the Simple Wholesaling Podcast, and then we are switching to something that's just been on our heart. God is leading us in an amazing way, because really what we're talking about here is doing real estate, but doing it with a purpose and doing it with a passion, and putting your faith in your business, or putting just why are you doing what you're doing every single day. And that's a question that we all have to ask ourselves, and I have to ask myself every morning, why do I want to do this business today? Should I continue doing it the way I have been doing it? Should I change it? Is it leading me closer to Jesus? Is it leading me closer to my family? Is it leading me closer to my why? And these are all questions that I have to ask myself. And that's why we're changing and rebranding our podcast to Real Estate with a Purpose. And that's coming after our 100th episode.
So with that, I would really appreciate some feedback from our audience on how you would want us to change things in the show. So any feedback that you guys have moving forward, definitely if there's something that you'd really like us to change up or add like a section to the show, or remove a section from the show, or whatever, just please, whatever your thoughts are, we'd love to hear your comments. So send me an email at Jaren@simplewholesaling.com.
Probably say, Jaren needs to talk less.
He sounds like a woman.
Jaren needs it deeper in his voice.
Like use the soundboard and turn down the bass.
I need to sound like I smoke cigarettes a lot.
Hello.
Sorry.
Hello. It puts its lotion on its skin.
All right.
They're going to be like, anyway, moving on. Brett's Inside of the Week.
For the Inside of the Week, guys, we're going to talk about an amazing resource that we've been using in Simple Wholesaling for the last few years, and it has absolutely changed the way we do business. and has given us so much wisdom, so much information, and that is our good friends over at biggerpockets.com. And if you haven't heard of Bigger Pockets, please go there right now. It has a plethora of forums, blogs. They have their own podcast, which I was represented on their podcast on, I think it was episode...
I don't know what it was.
231, I believe. I'm going to check that. But
it'll be in the show notes at www.simplewholesaling.com/episode 90.
That's right. So check out our show notes for I was featured on their podcast. And they just have tons of information. And if you're new to this business and you want to find someone else in your area, so let's say you live in Pittsburgh and you don't know any investors in Pittsburgh, you can go there, type in Pittsburgh, and find investors in your local area and connect with them, network with them, have coffee with them, go to the local RIA events there, and just rub shoulders with people doing what you want to do in your local areas. So that's an amazing way. So it's just really changed our business. We're also a blog contributor for them. So if you type in Brett Snodgrass over at biggerpockets.com, I think we've written like 50 or 60 blogs for them, all about wholesaling and whatever else you guys want to read about. We wrote this one blog on like haunted houses, and that was pretty cool. Yeah, I like that one. Like some of the worst houses that we've bought. One was a haunted house that somebody had gotten murdered in. And one was a house that got burnt down.
Yeah.
We've talked about before. So anyways, we've written a lot of blogs for them over there. But it's just a great resource. I know Jaren has been good friends with the co-host on the podcast.
I want to say like good friends. But we definitely stay in touch.
Yeah.
Brandon Turner
over there. And Josh Dorkin is the creator of Bigger Pockets, and he's a good fellow too.
Yeah. I used to work for them actually for like 5 months in a temporary situation, so I learned a lot. They're a great company.
So if you guys want to learn about real estate investing in general that we can't offer you at simplewholesaling.com, please go there. And if you want to be a pro member, I think it's $49 a month or something like that, and I think it's well worth it.
Mm-hmm. Spiritual foundation. That's you, bro. I did the last one. Your time to pray. Tiger it.
So today on Spiritual Foundations, guys, I'm going to give you a verse. I'm going to give you a little bit of a situation that I've been kind of going through here lately. Going to be, just kind of transparent about everything. So the verse I'm going to read is 1 Thessalonians 5:11. It says, "Therefore encourage one another and build one another up, just as in fact you are doing." So again, very simple, just encouraging, building one another. I'm so blessed to have a team that I can be vulnerable with, that I can be transparent with, and just talk about things with. And I know Jaren has been a shoulder that I've leaned on, during good times, during bad times. Just, I'm just real. I'm not anything. I'm very transparent about what I've had as far as resources. I've had, a lot of money. I've had a little, and it's not that big of a difference to me. It makes me maybe a little bit more comfortable, but sometimes it makes me too comfortable, and that's not always a good thing, because sometimes you live in your little comfort zone, and you need to be stretched. You need to get outside of your comfort zone and to really be dependent upon the Lord. And I've been a little bit about that lately. So over Thanksgiving, this past Thanksgiving, I was at the house, and I had one of my good friends that works with us, Gary. He was at our house, and I was just kind of talking to him a little bit about this next year and what I wanted to look like. And I didn't know if I wanted to, continue scaling and growing this huge thing and all that. And but there's a lot of recognition with it. Like I said, I was on the Bigger Pockets podcast, which is awesome. I mean, Jaren set up that connection. That was amazing. And I belong to this mastermind group called the Collective Genius that we've talked about on past episodes. And they've asked me to share at their annual event, which is huge. They ask 6 or 7 guys out of the 100 and some odd guys, pretty much all millionaires in this room. They've asked me to share about what's it like having a team and having everybody just be all in, with the purpose and of the company. And that's awesome. And I was talking to my friend Gary about that, and I said, if I ever scale down, and let's say I don't have a big team, but I have a few individuals, maybe I can help mentor them, and I don't have this big thing, I won't be able to do things like speak maybe at the Collective Genius, because really, I think, maybe the only reason why they ask us is because we've done a few hundred deals this year, and we've been pretty successful and all that. And Gary said, that recognition is all great and everything, but it all collects dust. Recognition collects dust. And he talked to me about my basketball trophies, that I have probably 100 basketball trophies that I got when I was a kid. And where are they at right now? They're in my parents' basement, basically collecting dust, and they don't really mean anything to me right now. And he pulled out a cross that he had around his neck that he got from going through this men's retreat, which I asked him to go to. It's called The Great Banquet, and they give you these crosses basically at the end. And he pulled out this cross, and he said that this is the only accolade that I need. This is, my identity is in this. And it really kind of hit me, because sometimes, I'm sitting here and I'm like, well, what if I'm not doing 300 deals and people aren't asking me to come speak, and people aren't lifting us up, and they're not saying, man, you guys are awesome, you guys are killing it, crushing it, and people aren't giving me that words of affirmation that I sometimes feel like I need. And it really just kind of hit me that really the only thing that I really do need is the cross, and that God is really the only permanent thing, and this all is going to fade away anyways. People that have written books that were completely amazing, sold 1 million copies, they're collecting dust now, and they're not going to be able to take that with them. And the only thing that they'll have at the end is their relationship with Jesus and their eternity. And so that's just the thing that I'm just thinking about. And sometimes, when you're waking up like I do at 4 a.m. or something like that, and you're just sitting there and it's all quiet, sometimes that's when, like Jaren, I think, said on a episode before about just God speaking to you, and just in the stillness of the morning, or the stillness in the night, when your family's not around, your kids aren't around, your friends aren't around, it's just you and God, and you're just trying to figure out, which direction he wants you to go. And he's just kind of tugging at me here and there, and just this week, and just kind of opening up to you guys. This has been awesome. It's been a heck of a ride. I'm not saying we're shutting the doors or any means. We're definitely not. But are we going to try and scale it to 600 deals next year? I don't know. Maybe we do the same as we did this year, or less, and maybe it looks a little bit different. But if I make half the money I made this year, I'd still be fine. If I made 25% the money I made this year, we'd still be pretty good. So really, I just really need to just go to God, put my identity in Him, and that's really where it's at. So I think this next year you're going to be seeing a little bit more from Brett Snodgrass on just pursuing God, and I don't know what that looks like either, but you guys just pay attention. I can't wait. All right, guys, I am so excited for the guest today. We have the opportunity to interview a good friend of mine, Joe McCall, out of St. Louis. And a little bit about Joe. He's an avid family guy. He enjoys hanging out with his kids at the zoo, golfing, swimming with his girls in the pool. And nothing is more important to Joe than God and family. But on his business side, Joe has flipped over 100 deals, and he is helping numerous and dozens and and even hundreds of students to flip hundreds of more deals. He loves doing deals and he loves coaching students, and he's been fortunate. Joe, I always see you. You're always traveling. You're always like doing your business from your camper and on a campsite somewhere.
Yeah,
and
living the life.
Yeah, he just has an awesome business because he loves creating systems, and I hope we can really dive into that. You also need to check out Joe's podcast, the Real Estate Investing Mastery Podcast, which I happen to be a guest on. Not sure when the episode's coming out, but cool guy.
Last week, Brett.
Last week. Well, we're definitely going to
Put that
out
in the show notes.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for being on the show today, Joe. So glad to have you.
That's good to be on your show. You know, Brett, I've been watching you with your Simple Wholesaling podcast and what you've got on your website. I'm always jealous because your stuff just looks so good, you know? It looks clean, it looks organized, it looks simple.
And my face is on it. Is that right?
No, I mean, not like that. But it was great meeting you in Indianapolis about a month ago, I think is what it was. What?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you came to our local Cyria event and put on an amazing presentation. So thank you. It was cool.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Hey, man, to kick this thing off, can you tell us like your superhero origin story? Like, where do you come from? How did you get involved in real estate? And then let's dive straight into lease options.
Yeah, man. So I was working as a civil engineer for a large engineering company in Kansas City. They sent me to California to work on a job that was supposed to be a couple weeks. It turned into a couple months. But because of that, they started moving me because I was so good, I guess. They started moving me around the country to different big power plants. And I was traveling a lot. This was 2000. We didn't have kids at the time. But then, if you remember, Enron collapsed, and that sent shockwaves through the entire energy industry. And at the time, then, the job I was working on shut down. And my wife and I were actually living in San Francisco. We loved it out there. And we had rented our house out. And during that 10 months that it was renting out, we had the tenants from HE double hockey sticks. I mean, they were the worst tenants in the world. Every week something was broken, needed to be fixed. They were always late.
Oh,
the property management company was doing an okay job, but I have to pay the mortgage every month. And if the rent is a week late, I don't get the late fees. The property management keeps the late fees, you know? So it was always a stress to pay the mortgage every month, to pay the repairs. And then, the property management company charged a fee on top of the repairs. And I got so frustrated paying $100 to fix a leaky faucet that I could fix for free. But I'm halfway across the country. So I said to myself, I'm never going to own rental properties again. I don't like real estate investing. This is horrible. It's a bad idea. So fast forward a couple years, we did sell that house because then we moved to St. Louis. But then a friend of mine in Kansas City started reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad and started getting a lot of education and training. And I read the book and I got super excited about real estate. And I started kind of a long journey of about 4 or 5 years of a lot of studying, spending a lot of money on education and not making anything, right? A typical story of, buying course after course after course, just looking for that magic pill, looking for that one little secret that I could start using and implementing. And I became an information junkie. And it was really embarrassing now for me talking about this because I know now what a fool I was back then because I had a really good education on all of this stuff. I was passionate about real estate, wanting to work for myself, but I never took any action with the stuff that I was buying, right? Like I remember spending $13,000 on credit cards in my first coaching program, didn't have anything to show for it a year later. And I remember, at the time blaming the coaching company, right? Like blaming the people that sold me this crappy education. But looking back, I am the only one to blame for not making any money because I was just looking at the course just a few months ago that they gave me. And then I was looking through it and, it's kind of simplistic stuff, but it wasn't like the latest and greatest cutting edge. Maybe it was a little outdated, but if I would have just implemented 10% of what they taught me to do, I would have done the deal. I would have made money. So I'm passionate now today of like helping people kick them in the butt as hard as I can to get out of this over analyzing education mode and get out there, start making offers. Like forget about steps 7 and 8, just start doing steps 1 and 2. So anyway, It wasn't until my back was against the wall. I had about 15 or 16 houses at the time that I bought with bank financing. I bought them all wrong. This was about 4 or 5 years into my education. So I started taking action, but I was mixing and matching a bunch of different courses. Like I would take a little bit of what this guy said over here and a little bit of what this guy said. And I thought I had to learn wholesaling and short sales and rehabbing and lease options. I had to learn all this stuff to become a well-rounded investor. So, but anyway, I had a bunch of really bad properties, made a bunch of bad decisions, borrowed a bunch of private money, and got a bunch of bank loans, and then the market collapsed. And so,
man,
I went down in flames with it. It was a very, very difficult time for me and my family. We lost our house to short sale. We lost other rentals to foreclosures. I had a bunch of private money. I paid all my private lenders back by God's grace, but it was very stressful that whole time. And I realized I was in a serious cash flow problem. And so I decided to buy one more course, and I was going to just implement what this guy said. And I wasn't going to question anything. I didn't like his postcards. I didn't like his scripts. I didn't like his contracts. And like, I'm the expert because like, quote unquote, I've wholesaled a lot of deals. No, I mean, like, I just thought I knew better. And this was Chris Chico's course on virtual wholesaling. He called it absentee owner profits at the time. So I bought his course and I just started implementing it, not changing anything. And I started actually doing deals. I was so excited. I started actually wholesaling properties. And this was 2008. My first deal, I made like 12 grand, $500, making every mistake imaginable. But I was like, I had to make a change. I had to do this. So anyway, over the next year, I started wholesaling. And then about 2009, I'm still working my job and I'm working on power plants in St. Louis area. And I said, I'm throwing away a lot of leads. And I just say, you know what can I do with these leads I'm throwing away? And I started doing lease options with the leads that I'd throw away and started flipping the lease options. And this is when the market was tanking. It was almost at its worst. Everybody was running to the hills. And I'm starting to make more money flipping lease options than anybody else that's doing regular wholesaling. Nobody's doing really any rehabbing anymore. So in 2009, after about 3 months of making more money flipping lease options than I was in my full-time job, this was in the spring of 2009, I quit my job. And I was making about 75, 80 grand a year as an engineer at this company, is making really good money, but I hated working in a cubicle. I hated that whole grind. And so I quit my job. It had been 3 months consecutively of making more money doing real estate. And so that's when I left, and I was really scared, but my wife was behind me. She was supportive, and haven't looked back since. It's been a wild, crazy ride. I've made a lot of mistakes.
Man, that's awesome.
Sounds like it. Sounds like you're the worst investor ever.
Yeah, well, thank you so much.
Wow.
I'm just kidding.
Those were Brett's words, by the way, not mine.
I'm just poking at you, Joe. I never really heard your story, I think, from beginning to end. And that's just really cool because whenever I hear of your name, I always think of, high level coaching and always successful and just doing amazing things. But thank you for just being real, being vulnerable, and just kind of sharing your story. I think people can really relate to that. And you mentioned Chris Chico's course. And it's funny because I was rehabbing and flipping retail houses, but I wanted to get back into wholesaling. I just didn't know how to do it. And there was this lady out in California named Mary, and she introduced me to Chris Chico's course. And I looked at it a little bit. She was talking about this, direct mail stuff and writing letters. And it took me back to the college days because I think I ordered this course of like stuffing envelopes and like making like 20 cents like per envelope or something, and it was kind of crazy, but it worked. And that's pretty awesome, man. So
yeah,
cool. So thank you again for bringing us up to date. So now talk to us about, I know you came to Indianapolis and you talked to us about wholesaling lease options. I know this is really a new thing for me. And the other thing I really got from your story is you said that you learned a bunch of different things from a bunch of different courses. And it's so funny because we have guests all the time on our podcast, and a lot of times they're talking about something that I don't know anything about.
Yep, me too.
And this is one of those subjects.
Yeah, I'm really excited because I remember even a month ago when you were at the local Syria, I had somebody come up to me and they're like, I don't really understand like how lease options work. Can you give me like an overview? And I was like, bro, I'm completely lost. I have no idea how they work at all.
Yeah.
So this is going to be like the lease option masterclass. So
yes,
well, it's real simple, right? Like a lease option is simply a lease with an option to buy in the future. So you can tie up a property, not tie up, but I don't like that phrase, but you can control a property on a lease with a contract or an option to buy it in a couple years. And so it's literally control without ownership. You can control valuable real estate without actually owning it. And so I believe if you do it right, it removes a lot of the risk involved. Now, for me, I think it should be a tool in your tool belt, right? You could do lease options full time if you wanted to, but I think our jobs as investors are to find deals. You find good deals. You find motivated sellers, right? But a cash offer is not going to work for every seller that you come across, right? You're going to find sellers that maybe don't have enough equity, or maybe they do, but they're not willing to share any of it with you. And so most investors just throw those leads away. Well, what if the seller would be open to owner financing or leasing it for a few years and then selling it? Maybe there's something you could do with that deal. So with a lease option, you give a lot of choices. And I prefer lease options over owner financing because with owner financing, a lot of times you have to take over the mortgage, but the seller still stays responsible for the mortgage. You take over the deed. So that's called subject to. You buying a house subject to the existing mortgage. Now you could call it a land contract or contract for deed or whatever. So that could be maybe an alternative, but I don't like that. It raises too many red flags with the due on sale mortgage police, right? But with a lease option, it's much simpler and you get the same amount of profit. And I feel like it still protects the owner and it protects you, the investor. So that's why I like lease options. So now let's say you get a deal. It's worth $200,000 and it needs maybe 5-10 grand in work. It just needs some cosmetics. But, the seller owes about 180 on it. Now, if you were to get that lead, if you were like most investors, they would just throw that lead away. There's nothing they can do about it. There's not enough room to list it on the MLS and pay a commission, and the seller doesn't want to do any work. Maybe it's a house that they just kicked the tenant out, but they're out of state and they're having a hard time managing this home. So a lease option might be a great alternative for them because now they can lease the property to somebody who wants to buy it. And so if there's enough equity, and generally speaking, if it's a sandwich lease option and you want to stay in the middle, you need only about 10 to 15% equity in the house to get a decent deal. The more the better, but as a minimum, you want about 15% equity in the house. And then for the cash flow, if there's some cash flow of maybe 25% of the rent. So let's say there's $300 or $400 a month in cash flow. You can offer the seller a lease option. You could say to the seller, well, listen, I can't buy it because you don't have enough equity in it, but what if I could lease your house for a little bit of time and I could take care of the maintenance and repairs? I could take care of the vacancies. And then I'll buy the house from you in a couple years, maybe 3-4 years down the road or whatever. And you won't have to pay any commissions. That wouldn't work for you, or would it? Or I like to ask, well, what would you want to do then? So they have this problem. The seller has a problem. They need to sell this house. They need to get rid of it, but they can't because there's not enough equity. They don't want to do the work. So a lease option might be a good alternative for them. The other thing is if the house doesn't have enough equity, well, maybe I could still get it under a lease option, but then just assign or sell that option to a tenant buyer for a fee, and then I'll be out of the deal. I actually have my realtor's license, but I also hire realtors to market those homes for me. You can make money from that. So you can make money by selling the lease option that you have with the seller. You can assign that interest, that contract to another tenant buyer and be out of the deal. So does that make sense? Yeah. I know I covered that pretty fast.
So here's where I lose it in the whole thing, where I don't understand the concept. So I understand tying it up in a lease option. I get, I'm tracking with you. You have a motivated seller, you do a lease option with them, but then how do you make money from that? I understand you said, you take it and then you assign that to a tenant buyer, quote unquote. But if you don't do that, how do you make money once you're at that point?
let's say it's a deal I'm going to stay in the middle in. This is going to be a sandwich lease option.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So on that $200,000 example, the seller owes 180. Okay. I'm going to give the seller an offer to lease option that house, and I'm going to give them an offer to buy it for 180 in 5 years. All right. Let's say their mortgage payments are $1,300 a month, but I can rent it for $1,600 a month. So I will make rent. I'll give the seller a contract to buy it for 180 and pay them $1,300 a month in rent for 5 years. Now I'm going to turn around and I'm going to stay in the middle. It's like a master lease. I'm going to stay in the middle and I'm going to sublease that property out to another tenant. And there's 3 ways you make money on these deals: cash now, cash flow, and cash later. So I'm paying $1,300 a month. I have a contract to buy it for an option to buy it within 3 to 5 years for 180.
And typically, do you put any money down with the seller?
On a sandwich lease option, I might put $100, maybe $1,000 if it's a really good deal.
Okay.
But yeah, so I'll just put maybe $100 or $1,000 down up front. That's your option consideration. All right. So then I sublease it out. I'm going to put a tenant buyer, but I'm going to stay in the middle. And I'm going to advertise that property. And I might put a little bit in it to make it rentable, like rent ready, but I'm not going to make it look super nice. I'm going to clean it out. I'm probably not going to paint it. I'll give the tenant buyer that I advertise it to maybe a little credit if they paint it themselves or something. But anyway, so the house is worth $200 today. I'm going to maybe sell it for $205 or $210 in 2 years to my tenant buyer that I put in there. And I'm going to turn around and rent it for $1,600, maybe $1,700. So I'm going to turn around and I'm going to advertise this nice house. And I only do this with nice homes in nice areas. I don't do this in Class C or Class D neighborhoods. It's only like median priced homes and not the real expensive ones, but right in the middle in the sweet spot. So I put a tenant buyer in the house. The tenant buyer is typically going to pay me about 3% to move in. So on a $200,000 house, they're going to pay me about $6,000 to move in as their option deposit money or as option consideration. So I'm going to make $6,000 up front. It doesn't have to sit in escrow. I can spend that money. I'm going to save some of it actually for future emergencies, unknowns, but I'm going to save it. But that's some money that I can make right then and there on the deal. And then I'm going to make $300 to $400 a month in cash flow for the next 2 years. So that's about $3,600 a year gross cash flow, maybe $7,200 then after 2 years. If that tenant buyer buys the home for $210, I'm going to do a double close and I'm going to buy it in 2 years from the seller for $180, and I'm going to immediately turn around and sell it to the tenant buyer for $210. So I make $30,000 at the back end.
So on that real quick, why would obviously, if the answer is just because of motivation, if the property is valued at $200, why would the original owner sell it for $180?
That's the question I ask all the time on our deal.
Yeah, well, you know what? By the way, that's a great question to ask the seller. Mm-hmm. When you're talking to the seller, you need to ask him that. Listen, why don't you just sell it yourself? Why do you need me?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like a nice house. Why haven't you sold it yet? But you know what? Another really good question to ask the seller is, what are you going to do, Mr. Seller, if you can't sell this house? Are you going to rent it out? Because the realtors aren't asking their sellers that. Mm-hmm. What are you going to do if you can't sell this house? They're just expecting to sell it. But what if they can't? So you got to think about this in the seller's perspective. It's worth $200, but they owe $180. If they want to sell it themselves, they're going to have to fix it up. They're going to have to pay a realtor commission of about 6%, which on a $200,000 house is about $12,000.
Right.
So after fixing it up, after paying the realtor commissions and letting it sit on the market for probably 3 to 4 months, they're actually going to lose money.
Yeah.
They're going to have to bring money to the table, and they just don't want to do that. And maybe a lot of times what it is they cannot make another mortgage payment. They don't have enough money in the bank to make another payment on a vacant house. Mm. So if they say, yeah, you know what, if I don't sell this, I'm going to have to rent it out. Well, that's a perfect lease option candidate, because now you can tell them, well, would you rather rent it to somebody who's going to call you every time the faucet leaks? Or would you rather rent the house to somebody who wants to buy it, who's going to fix the faucet themselves?
So the culture of lease options for tenants is it's expected for the tenant to take more pride in ownership, similar to how you treat this building.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, that's a good analogy. So I'm selling it now to somebody who wants to buy it, somebody who has bruised credit, damaged credit, who has a good reason for bad credit, and they want to buy the house, but for whatever reason they can't. It could be a lot of people are self-employed, and it's hard to get mortgages when you're self-employed. A lot of people are, maybe they had a recent divorce, a short sale 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it is, they can't buy a house right now, but they want to. They have good income. I do a background check on everybody. They have good income. They want to buy the house right now, but can't. They just need a year or two. And I work with mortgage brokers who tell me, yeah, this tenant buyer in a year or two, if they just do this and this, they should be able to get a mortgage. And so that's the kind of people I put into my home. And then while they're in the house, my mortgage broker works with them to rebuild their credit. And they have a lot of skin in the game. They put down 3% up front. So if they don't buy the house, they lose that money, right? So they do everything they can to pay the rent on time every month, to take care of the home, because they have that home ownership pride in that house. And so we make sure we set it up for a win-win-win, everybody involved. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
I'm going to ask you a couple of questions and just kind of hear me out on this. So when you approach the seller and you talk about this lease option, this idea, are you upfront that you're going to be subletting the house or subleasing the house out to someone else, and they have to be okay with all that, right?
Yeah, because they know I'm an investor, so I'm not going to be living in the house.
Right.
But I position it as, I call it my perfect tenant program, where I'm going to be the tenant. And so if the numbers work, I will stay in the middle and take care of the vacancies and take care of the minor maintenance and repairs.
Right.
Okay. Not the major things. If the roof blows off or the air conditioner, explodes, the seller still has to fix that, just like they would with a regular rental. And even though I'm in the middle, I don't have to be the one fixing that. I can pass that on to the owner. But anyway, they're fully open and honest and disclose everything. So I give the seller 2 different options. And I'll say, look, at this price, I will be the tenant buyer. At this price, I'm going to sell my contract to another tenant buyer. Okay, so they know what it is. But in both cases, they know I'm not living in the house. And, if you look at it this way, the sandwich lease option, I'm pretty much giving them the same equity they would get if they sold with a realtor. All right. And I'm giving them the same cash flow and rent that they would get if they hired a property manager. When you look at all of the expenses of selling with a realtor, it's going to sit on the market. You're going to have to fix it up. You're going to have to pay closing costs. You're going to have to pay commission. You're going to have to discount your price a little bit. Even in this hot market right now where prices are going up and houses are selling fast, the average discount between the original list price and the final sale price on the MLS is still about 3%, 3 to 4% in most markets across the U.S. So after all those expenses, the seller is really only going to walk away with about 13 to 15% less than what the original list price is. If they hire a property manager, the manager is going to collect the first month's rent as a fee most of the time. They're going to collect 10% of the rent. And usually they always find another creative way to tack on more fees on top of that. And so I'm just saying, I'm giving them an option. I'm giving them an offer saying, listen, I'll be the tenant. I'll manage. Is your property manager going to pay you the rent if the house is vacant? No. Is your realtor going to pay the rent while the property's sitting there being listed? No. So this may not be for you. And it's totally cool to say, no, I don't use any high pressure stuff. I tell sellers, I'm not going to try to talk you into anything. But this is just an option. I can buy it for cash. I give them a cash offer. But here's also a lease option offer. Maybe you need to think about this.
No, I think it's, like you said, Joe, I think that you can do this full time, but it can be a great tool. And I remember what you said at the Syria event that you were at here in Indianapolis is that this is for nice homes. And we throw a lot of leads away as wholesalers that don't have the equity in their home and we can't do anything with them. And then now this is a tool that we can use for those houses that don't have much equity in them.
Let me give you a good example of what we're doing right now in St. Louis on a deal. This is a seller that responded to our We Buy Houses direct mail. And we made them a cash offer. They had the equity, but they weren't like, no way. They're not that motivated, right? They're not going to give us that low of a price. But it needs about $10,000 in work, $10,000 to $15,000 in work. And the house is not ready to show. It's got a lot of work that needs to be done. So it's worth, I'm trying to remember the numbers as best I can. It's worth about $150,000 They agreed to sell it to us for $130 on a lease option, but it needs about $15,000 in work. So that's still not a deal that I want to stay in the middle of. That's not enough equity, right? It's worth $130. It needs about $15,000 in work. They're willing to do a lease option at $130. So this is what we did. Now follow along with the numbers here. So we gave them a contract to lease option the property for 2 years for $130,000. And then the market rents in the neighborhood are about $1,200 a month. And so their total mortgage payment's like $900 a month. But we gave them on the contract, the lease option contract, to rent it for $1,000 a month. So we gave them a lease option for 2 years for $130 and $1,000 a month. Does that make sense? So that's my A to B contract, okay? They said, yeah, we love it. And then we told them, okay, this is what we're going to do. There's not enough equity or cash flow for us to want to stay in the middle of this. But what we're going to do is if we find a good tenant buyer, we are going to sell our contract to that tenant buyer, and we're going to assign it to them, and we're going to keep their option deposit money as our assignment fee. Now, I don't want to get too deep into the details, but we use a third-party escrow company who's an attorney that handles all of that for us. And so the seller said, that's great. So this is how we advertise the property. So now we're still in the middle, okay? And I am a licensed agent. If I wasn't a realtor, then I would be hiring a realtor to market this home for me. Just stay with me here. My intent is not to stay in the middle of this deal. My intent is to sell the contract to a tenant buyer. So now I turn around and I advertise this contract to a tenant buyer. And I advertise it something similar to this. I'll say, this is a lease option contract on a house. The option price is $150, and we're advertising it as a handyman special. We'll give you a $15,000 work for equity credit if you fix it up yourself. And you have to fix it up before you move in, and you have to pass the occupancy inspection that the city has. And then we advertised it for $1,000 a month in rent. So we didn't mark up the rent because we're not staying in the middle. So do you think that would be an attractive contract, a lease option contract for a tenant buyer? Yes, because it's going to cost the seller $15,000 to hire a contractor to do the work. This lease option tenant buyer is looking at this thinking, it's only going to cost me $5,000 because I can do all the work myself. It's just going to cost me $5,000 in materials. So they're going to get a credit at closing if and when they buy the house in a year or 2 years down the road for $15,000. And the rent is $200 less than the market rents. Now, we have it in the marketing material and in the contract that they have to do the work before they move in, and they have to start paying rent immediately. Okay, so we just got this under contract the other day, and we're just now starting to market the home. We're going to be putting signs and doing Craigslist ads and stuff. But I've done these deals before, and they sell like hotcakes because there's a lot of tenant buyers out there that are handy. They want to buy a house. Maybe they're self-employed. They can't right now. And now this is an opportunity where they can get into a property that's $200 less than the market rent. It's a real nice suburban area, and they can put in the work themselves. It's only going to take them maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks max to get it fixed up. Then you get the city to come in to inspect it. They stamp their approval on it. So this is a great deal. The seller wins because they don't have to fix the house up. They're getting somebody in the house that's going to rent it, has sweat equity. They've put down 3%. They're going to take care of the home, right? And I win because I put the deal together. I'll make on this deal about $5,000 for selling my contract.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like an amazing strategy. My question is, with every strategy, right, you take wholesaling, you take buy and hold, there's definitely pros and cons, right? So what are some of the things you want to look out for when doing a lease option? What are the things you want to make sure you do right? Like, for example, in wholesaling, you have to make sure that you buy right. Otherwise, everything's thrown off.
This is really important in lease options. And we talked about this. Remember the newspaper article I talked about at the RIA group, right? There's a lot of things you could do wrong in any kind of deal structures that you're doing, but especially lease options. You got to make sure you're only dealing with nice houses and nice areas. I can't overemphasize that enough. You don't want to do lease options in crappy neighborhoods because let's say that tenant buyer were to get their mortgage, get their credit fixed, they could get a mortgage. Do you think they're going to want to buy a house in that $50,000 neighborhood? No. So the chances of that tenant buyer buying the house are very slim in those neighborhoods. So you want to deal with nice houses and nice neighborhoods where the people want to own homes there, right? So that's number one. Make sure you deal in nice areas. Number two, you want to make sure you're setting up the tenant buyers to win. So many times the people that get in trouble with lease options or who complain that they don't work, it's because they're not putting people in the home that have a realistic chance to get a mortgage in 1 or 2 years. You want to make sure you can only put people in the house that have a realistic chance of getting a mortgage in 1 or 2 years. So they have to put some money down. They have to have some skin in the game. They have to have a good job. They have to have good income, and they need to be vetted by one of your mortgage brokers who can help them during that time that they're lease optioning the home. The other thing is, the third thing, you don't want to overinflate the value of the home. One of the reasons why this guy in Indianapolis got in trouble is he's buying these houses for $20,000, not doing anything to them. They're completely trashed, and he's selling them for $50,000 on an owner financing or lease option or something like that. Well, that just doesn't make any sense. So, like in this example I just gave you, I gave the seller a contract, an option to buy it for $130,000. It's worth $150,000 today. I'm not going to try to sell it for $170,000 or $175,000. There's gurus out there, and you've heard of them, that will say, I hope the tenant buyer doesn't buy the home, because then I can go back in there, put a new tenant buyer in and make more money, right? Mm-hmm. Get another option deposit, raise the price even higher. That's not my philosophy at all. I think that's wrong. I think that's dangerous. You need to make sure that you're setting up the buyers to win. You got to make sure you're winning. So if it's too risky of a deal, you don't want to stay in the middle. You want to make sure the seller is being taken care of. So that's my philosophy. You've got to set up everybody to win, win, win. So those are some of the biggest mistakes that people need to think about and be aware of. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So one other question I have. So when you're in a sandwich lease option and when you're in the middle, the end buyer, it's justifiable to charge them if the value of the property today is $200,000 to tie them up today for $210,000, $215,000 based on the projection of appreciation or based on the fact that they would otherwise not qualify for a mortgage?
Yes, both. So it's like, this is a price that's going to be in a couple of years from now, right? So I'm expecting some modest appreciation, maybe 2-3% over the next 2 years. And you can also charge a little premium on a lease option. Like if you had a house that had granite countertops versus regular Formica countertops, you can charge a premium for that, right? If they have solid oak cabinets versus cheap laminate cabinets, or if they have a pool in the backyard, maybe if depending on where you live, if that's a premium or feature or not. But like it's the same with creative financing. So if you are selling a house with creative financing, you can charge a premium with that. But you got to make sure it's not outrageous. So I figure maybe a conservative 3% a year on appreciation, maybe 3 to 5% premium for doing the lease option. And here's the other thing too. If the house doesn't appraise for that amount in 2 years, my contracts will automatically extend. We won't kick the tenant buyer out. They'll automatically extend and give the tenant buyer another, 6 months or a year to buy the house.
So then what about if you're in a market like California where within a year it can appraise if you're projecting 3% appreciation, but it's like a 10 or something, how do you protect yourself in that? Would you just get caught selling? I mean, I guess it really wouldn't matter at the end of the day, because if you did it right, you'd still make money.
That's an important question, because the price could go down as well, right? I mean, nobody knows what the market's going to do in 2 years. It may go up and it may go down. So if a seller's bringing me that objection and they say, well, I don't want to lock in a price because what if the price goes way up in 2 years? Sometimes what you can do is you could say, well, we could do this. We could set the option price. You got to have some number that you set the option price at. But if it's any higher than that, we will split that with the tenant buyer. So let's say you give the seller a contract for $400, it's worth $450. Well, then we'll sell it for $425. So half of that appreciation goes to the seller, half of it goes to the buyer. But then I tell the seller it has to be the other way around too. If that house is worth $350, okay, then what do you want to do then? Were you okay with selling it for $375 in the middle? So it just kind of depends on it. It's a case by case basis.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Again, guys, I think it's a great tool, and I definitely am looking at the pretty houses that we come in, the leads. I know that I'm going to be watching out for this tool and using this. And it might not be for everybody, just like wholesaling might not be for everybody, and flipping might not be for everybody, but I think this is a great
Definitely
strategy.
flipping is not for you if your name is Brett Snodgrass.
Yeah.
And watch,
Brett,
he's gonna
what I appreciate about you, Brett, is that you keep everything so simple. And so if you're listening to this, here's what I say sometimes. Like, shiny objects make you go blind, but focus makes you rich, right? So one of the reasons why you've done so well, Brett, is because you focused on simple wholesaling.
Yeah.
And that's it, right? And when you try to get distracted with other things, it blows up in your face. That's at least with me. So if I look back over my 8 years of investing now full time, when I've been laser focused, that's when I've made the most money.
Yeah.
And so if somebody listening to this is thinking, oh, great, another shiny object, squirrel, and they go after it, you got to be super careful with that. You got to make the decision, like, do you have the bandwidth right now to handle a new strategy? Or should you just be focusing on what you've originally been intending to do? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That does. But I also think that there are tools in your tool belt that are not exactly what you're doing, but they really go well with what you're doing. Like, for example, for me, this could go a little bit along the same lines of what we're doing because, we just have to market it to maybe a different type of buyer than what we're normally doing right now. But like flipping and wholesaling, that's kind of completely different because there's just got a whole set of instructions with it and different steps with it. So I wouldn't call those two items in the same category, but I think, wholesaling or sandwich lease options and wholesaling, they could go, like for example, we're wholesaling houses in Indy, and this last year we started wholesaling land. Well, we're still wholesaling. It's still the same type of strategy. It's just two different things. So I think you can do some different things if they go down the same road. So
that's a great point. And we're flipping vacant lots now as well, but in Colorado and Oregon. I would say, like, you can add on those tools into your tool belt as long as you are grounded and you know what you're doing with your main thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got that handled. You already know wholesaling. And so adding on a new income stream makes sense for you. I totally agree.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, with that, we're going to go into the next section of the show, Joe, that we like to call Going Deep. So, and in this section, we're just going to spend a few minutes talking about you and your personal life, and just go into your website, joemccall.com. You actually have a section called Faith Corner, and I really want to dive into that. Why is that on your website, and what does that mean to you?
Good question. I hope it's still up because I'm getting my websites redesigned right now.
I just went there and it was up there.
Okay, good. It's Faith Corner, and I've got some videos from Greg Laurie there. And are they still up, those videos? Yeah, good. Simple videos. I think, I became a Christian in 1988. I was about 14 years old. So God means a lot to me. It means a lot to my family. And, I believe in the verse that seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you.
Amen.
So, I'm not embarrassed to wear my faith on my sleeve. Sometimes people give Christians a hard time with, you just use faith as a crutch. Well, yeah, Jesus is my crutch, man. He's the hospital bed. He's the ambulance. Without him, we're nothing, right?
Yeah.
So he's much more than a crutch. But faith is super important to me, and it's important. I don't shove it down people's throat. If people want to talk about it, I let them ask me about it. But sometimes, I'll tell people like, yeah, man, I have a friend right now who has his baby's going through a hard time. So I'll tell him things like, man, I'll pray for you. And, I don't know if he's a Christian or not, but he appreciates that, right? Like, I care enough to tell him, like, hey, man, I'm going to pray for you. So I'm not embarrassed of my faith. I put a Faith Corner on my website because I want people to know. But I also made a statement on there, like, it makes me nervous too, because I'm not perfect. And like Paul said, I am the, how does it go? I'm the chief of sinners.
Yeah.
But he also phrases it a little different. He says, I am the worst, or something like that. God came to save sinners, of whom I am the worst, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I'll never have a Christian bumper sticker on my car. Because
there's a lot of wisdom there.
I don't want people to see my reckless driving.
And when you're flipping somebody off at the stoplight.
So it's like, God have mercy on me. And so one of the things I wrote on the website there is that I'm not perfect by any means. He's changed my life. I'm far from perfect. But despite all the mistakes I've made and how often I fail, I know that because of his grace, he's made me clean. And I don't deserve his mercy. I don't deserve his grace. I get the grace. He gets the glory. That's another one of my favorite phrases. And that's what it's all about for me.
That's cool,
awesome, man.
Yeah, thanks for sharing and opening up. Appreciate that.
By the way, guys, I totally failed at mentioning the show notes. So there'll be lots and lots of mentions and links and so forth at www.simplewholesaling.com/episode 90. And I will have a link directly to the Faith Corner of Joe's website.
If it's still up.
If it's still up.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Well, so you get to work while you travel a lot and you're spending a lot of time with your family. How has being able to live those experiences with them allowed you to enjoy your day job even more?
I don't look at my day job like what I do as a day job, but I guess it kind of is. But I really enjoy it. And there's this concept called Life in Air, and Steve Cook and Sean McCloskey. Yeah, and I was like into that when it first got started. And the whole concept is you design a vision for your life first and then build a business around it. And so I sat down very intentionally at the beginning and said, I want a business that will allow me to travel. We homeschool our 4 kids, not because we're anti-school. I mean, we kind of are sometimes. But we're so pro homeschool, right? So we decided we want to homeschool because we want to travel. So we've been to Europe a couple times for 2 to 3 months at a time. We've taken our RV for 3 months at a time across the northwestern corner of the U.S. So I wanted a light business, like a business that didn't have huge overhead, a lot of staff. I wanted a business that I could run from my computer from anywhere in the world. And I was very intentional at the beginning on designing a business that would allow me to do that. I didn't want a business that required a lot of paperwork. I didn't want a business that required hard landlines or desks and offices and stuff like that. I want everything on my laptop, and I could run it from my phone if I had to. That is in the cloud, that I could be at a beach, I could be at a Starbucks, I could be in Prague, wherever I wanted with my family. And so since we're homeschooling them, I could, instead of, training them or teaching them about Reformation, instead of just teaching them about the Reformation, let's take them to Italy. Let's show them the Vatican. One of the things we want to do next is go take a month or 2 months going up and down the East Coast and talk about the Revolution and the Civil War on the East Coast. And how cool would that be, right? As we're learning about that kind of stuff, to go take them to Gettysburg or to take them to Philadelphia. So that kind of stuff I'm super passionate about, and we get to have fun with my kids. I don't want to live the retirement lifestyle when I'm 65. I don't want to travel the world after my kids are out of the house, after they don't like me anymore. I want to travel with them and show them the world now while they're still in the house, and have those kinds of memories and experiences now. And so that, I still work hard. Sometimes I'll work 30 hours a week. Sometimes I'll work 50 hours a week, but I can work on my terms from wherever I want, right? Right now I'm in an office at our house. We have a separate house in our property. And so I'm in an office there, and I can go work from the home if I want, or I can go to Starbucks if I want. So I was very intentional with creating that vision for my life. What do we want our life to look like? And then designing a business around that.
That's awesome.
You need to read that book, Brett.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's where you're at right now in life. I'm not going to call you out on the podcast because I just did. But I'm telling you, I think that's Holy Spirit being like, hey, buddy, pay attention over there.
That's definitely something we said, designing a business around the vision you want for your life. And I think that as entrepreneurs and people that want to be successful, we're really just pushed to grow something and to make something bigger and to not stop and just to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And sometimes that's maybe not what you want for your life. Maybe you wanted something different, like traveling the world or whatever. And
it's freeing, Brett, because a lot of people think they've got to have $10 million in their 401k to retire and live comfortably. That's not really the case. If you're debt free and you're living your vision, if you put a dollar amount to your vision, you'll be shocked at how cheap it really is. You only need to make maybe $5 to $10 grand a month to live your vision. And Brett, you could do that in your sleep.
Yeah, it's true.
It's like 2 deals a month. Right there.
Yeah.
So it's not, we got to write your vision down. You got to put it on a calendar, and you got to put a dollar amount to it. And instead of buying that vacation home, maybe just rent it a couple, 3 times a year. Right? Instead of buying the boat, just rent it the 1 or 2 times a year that you're going to use it.
And Brett's not one of those guys that buys boats. He'll buy a boat that was like $1,200 he found on Craigslist. He's not flashy at all.
You know what's cool though is I think at least one time a year you really need to sit down and focus on this, and it's not a quick thing. And I know that we're getting ready to go out to San Diego, my wife and I, for our Collective Genius Mastermind group. And I know really the theme of the whole week is vision and creating that. And I think it's really powerful. My wife's going with me, and we're really going to be able to talk about things and kind of create a vision together, because I really want to see what her vision is too. Sometimes she just tries to survive at home, too, with the kids, and I don't really know what she wants in her future. So,
man, it's going to be powerful.
Well,
yeah, man.
I'll see you there.
All right.
I haven't bought my tickets yet. So,
we better get on that, Joe.
oh, man, that's the usual. But I'll probably fly down Monday morning, come back Wednesday night.
Awesome.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you there. It'll be good. Meeting your wife.
Yeah, definitely, Joe.
It's time for a touch of randomness.
Hey, we're going to end on a little bit of a random, lighter note. So we just have a couple of questions. This is called the touch of randomness. So actually, we just got one question. So when I interviewed you for the Syria event a few weeks ago, and you were actually on a Segway, which I thought was really cool. Like you were flying like Superman through the air. Yeah. And you should put a link that in the show notes, the video that we're talking to Joe
I'm
with.
on my treadmill right now. It looks like I'm walking, kind of.
Yeah, there you go. But I know you're a really tech guy, and you love technology, and you love apps and things like that. So what is your favorite tech toy or gadget, I guess, or app maybe?
I love the iPhone 10, man. It's amazing right now. You know what's cool? I was just on the phone this
Is that the
morning.
iPhone X, or is there
Yes,
another? Okay.
10.
Cool.
Call it the X if you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't know.
If you're not an Apple fanboy, you can call it the iPhone X.
That's funny.
So the Google Pixel is not going to take over the iPhone, in your opinion?
I might convert from iPhone to the Google Pixel.
Yeah,
I'm really looking at possibly converting.
It's a good phone. It's a good phone. But I'm telling you, this Face ID, it's amazing. It's really accurate and good. I mean, it could be completely dark. I could be wearing a hat and glasses, and it'll pick my face up.
So
I
what
think
does
it's
it
amazing.
do? Is that like the fingerprint?
But it just scans your face. It shoots like 1,000 light beams at your face. Probably gives you cancer or something like that. I don't know.
Wow, that sounds...
Well, here's the cool thing. One of my favorite tools is called Meister, and it's an online mind mapping tool, mindmeister.com. And I've been using it for years. All my courses are kind of built on it. When I'm doing some free content that I give away on my podcast or on YouTube, I'll build it all in a mind map. And MindMeister is all online. So I can share it with people, and I can give them view-only permissions so they can't get in there and edit it and change it and mess it up. So I can share it with people and collaborate if I want, so they can make some changes, or I can just share view-only, kind of like Google Drive, Google Docs, right?
So like if I wanted to put like a map of my team and the departments on there, that'd be a good tool I could use for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's similar to XMind. It's the one that I've used to help create when we did the Simple Wholesaling course.
Yeah, XMind is good, but MindMeister is much more advanced as far as being on the cloud. Like it's all on the cloud. It's not on your computer and in the cloud. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's awesome.
So MindMeister, I love it. I've been around, used it for a long, long time. I just talked this morning to the guy who started the company and who's the president. His name is Michael something from, I think he's in Belgium or the Netherlands. And he called me and he scheduled the call with me, but I'm one of their biggest users. And he wanted to call me and ask me some questions about how I like it, what I use it for, and any ideas for future of how they can make it better. And I said to him, listen, please, whatever you do, don't ever sell your company. Don't ever close the doors. I literally use it all the time. I have hundreds of mind maps. If I'm overwhelmed, I don't have hundreds. I have about 100 in there. But my brain is exploding with ideas and I just need to puke them out. That sounds gross. But I open up a mind map, right? And I just map it all out. And you can move it around. You can attach files. You can attach links. You can share it with people. And I do a lot of teaching from it, where I'm teaching, and my webcam is kind of in the corner, and I'm teaching from the mind map. And it's just, I think, a really great, versatile tool.
Man, I'm going to go check it out.
Yeah.
Right after the show. I got it bookmarked.
That's a great nugget, great tip, guys. So that's definitely going to be in the show notes. What's the show notes, Jaren?
www.simplewholesaling.com/episode 90.
All right. Well, that's a wrap, Joe. I appreciate you so much, man, just for taking the time out of your busy schedule, joining us today on the Simple Wholesaling podcast. But again, if someone wants more information about you, I know you have some amazing courses out there in a coaching program. Where's the best place for them to go?
Well, I got a couple websites. JoeMcCall.com is my main one, I guess. I have a podcast, realestateinvestingmastery.com, realestateinvestingmastery.com. And if you want to see that mind map thing in action, I created an entire mind map on wholesaling. I called it Wholesaling 101 because simplewholesaling.com was already taken. By the way, if you ever want to sell that domain, let me know.
Thanks, Joe.
I ask you that every time I see it. But I created a whole mind map, and I did a bunch of videos on how wholesaling 101. And if you go to flipmindmap.com, you can get that entire video series and mind map to download. All the videos, we have all the videos that have been transcribed. I'm going to turn it into a book eventually. But flipmindmap.com, you can get it for free right now.
Awesome.
If anybody's interested.
Great. Well, you'll find all those in the show notes. And thank you so much, Joe. If there's anything else that we can do for you, I just really appreciate your wisdom and your real and your rawness, sharing your story and everything that you've gone through. I wish you so much success in the future, man. And I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it, guys, very much. Thank you, Brett.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, my friend. Talk soon.
All right. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Simple Wholesaling. If you enjoyed today's show, please head over to iTunes, give us a rating, and leave a review. Be sure to pick up a copy of our free ebook, The Simple Wholesaling System, by joining our community over at www.simplewholesaling.com/our-system.